Rain stitched the afternoon together with a thin, patient needle. It soaked the long driveway, darkened the hedges, flattened the dust into silence. Adewale Kincaid's car slowed before the iron gate of his estate, the kind of gate that knew its owner by sound alone. Today, it didn't open. He leaned forward, irritation rising. Then he saw her. Mama Sola sat by the gate in a wheelchair, her wrapper heavy with rain, her head bowed like an apology. A small suitcase rested beside her, cheap and scuffed, as if it had been chosen in a hurry. Her medicine pouch lay open on the ground. Pills floated in a shallow puddle, color bleeding out of them. Adewale stepped out before the driver could speak, his shoes filled with water. He didn't care. Mama. She lifted her face at the sound of his voice. Her eyes, clouded by blindness, searched the air until they found him. She smiled. It was careful, practiced. I just wanted fresh air, she said, as if rehearsing had made it true. Her fingers shook as they found his sleeve. Please, don't let this scatter your home. He swallowed. The rain thickened. She paused. The gate waited. Silence answered. Inside the compound, the house stood clean and bright, untouched by weather. When Ifeoma appeared at the doorway, she was composed, dry, perfect. Her voice carried politely across the rain. Mama Sola could be difficult, she said. Old habits, old complaints. Stress affected everyone. For a moment, Adewale felt the familiar pull of reason. Then he noticed the details. His mother whispered that she smelled, that the wheelchair made the sitting room look messy. Near the trash, her shawl lay folded wrong. A box inside the hallway bore her name, half-packed. Mama Sola squeezed his hand, defending the woman who had locked the door. Silence, he realized, had trained her well. Neighbors gathered without gathering. An old woman across the road started to speak, then stopped, eyes darting to the house. Fear stood where words should have been. Hello guys, welcome to Ebony Billionaire Tales. Let's prove my girlfriend wrong and hit 1,000 subscribers with stories of love, empathy, and connection. If you're drawn to grounded African stories that sound like home and feel like truth, please subscribe, like, and share this story. Adewale lifted his mother gently, rain streaking his suit. Power had never felt so thin. As he crossed the threshold, a single thought pressed in, unwelcome and sharp. If the gate could stay closed this long, what else had he chosen not to see? The house smelled of disinfectant and polished wood. Comfort without warmth. Adewale settled Mama Sola on the couch, her wet wrapper replaced, her medicine set aside to dry even though he knew it was ruined. She kept apologizing in small breaths, as if rain had been her fault. Ifeoma moved efficiently. Tea appeared. Towels. Explanations arranged themselves neatly in the air. She spoke of routine, of stress, of how difficult it was to manage a household that refused to move forward. Her voice never rose. That was the most unsettling part. Adewale listened. He always had. He asked simple questions. Why the gate was locked. Why the neighbors looked away. Why his mother had a suitcase. Ifeoma smiled, thin and patient. She said Mama Sola liked to dramatize. She said the suitcase was for cleaning. She said people misunderstood old age. Each answer landed softly. Each one left a bruise. Mama Sola stayed quiet, hands folded, head bowed. When Adewale looked at her, she nodded at whatever Ifeoma said, like a child desperate not to prolong punishment. The sight tightened something in his chest he had trained himself not to feel. He walked through the house alone. The walls were dressed with art he barely remembered buying. In the spare room, Mama Sola's things were missing. Her radio, her walking stick. In their place, empty shelves and a faint square of dust where life used to sit. He paused. The house breathed. Nothing moved. In the backyard, the generator hummed. Power never failed here. It never failed anywhere Adewale went. He realized, with a flicker of bitter humor, that everything worked perfectly, except the people. When he returned inside, Ifeoma was on the phone, laughing softly. Business. Always business. She ended the call when she saw him, expression smoothing back into concern. You know I love her, she said. But love must be practical. That word again. Night came without ceremony. Mama Sola slept early, exhaustion claiming her before fear could. Adewale sat alone in his study, the room where decisions were usually clean and bloodless. On impulse, he opened the security app on his tablet. He told himself it was to reassure his mind, to end the unease. The footage loaded slowly. He watched rainless afternoons, empty corridors. Then a familiar frame appeared. Mama Sola, being wheeled toward the gate. No struggle. No raised voices. Just Ifeoma's hands on the chair, steady and sure. The gate opening. The chair stopping just outside. The gate closing. Adewale's breath caught. His finger hovered, then tapped forward. Ifeoma turned away without looking back. Locked the gate. Walked inside. That was all. No cruelty loud enough to argue with. No anger to confront. Just a choice made calmly, repeatedly. He sat back, the room suddenly too small. The power he commanded in boardrooms meant nothing here. Evidence burned quietly on the screen, waiting. Outside, rain began again. And for the first time, Adewale understood that believing the lie would be easier than surviving the truth. Morning arrived thin and colorless. Adewale called for Ifeoma before breakfast, his voice steady in a way that surprised even him. She came dressed for the day, tablet tucked under her arm, already halfway elsewhere. He didn't raise his voice. He placed the tablet on the table and turned the screen toward her. Explain this. The footage played without sound. Mama Sola. The wheelchair. The open gate. The closed one. Ifeoma watched without blinking. When it ended, she exhaled slowly, like someone disappointed by a predictable outcome. You went looking, she said. Not angry. Observant. Adewale waited. She sat down, smoothing her skirt. She spoke of boundaries, of how a house cannot freeze in time for weakness. She said she married a future, not a past. That compassion without control becomes chaos. Her words were clean, sharpened by repetition. He felt something settle inside him. Not rage. Clarity. Mama Sola stood in the doorway, guided by memory more than sight. She had heard the silence change. Her voice, when it came, was soft but anchored. A house that hides its elders, she said, is teaching its children how to disappear. The room stilled. She paused. The words hung. No one rushed to save them. Ifeoma turned toward her, irritation finally cracking the surface. She began to explain again. Care, resources, practicality. But the language slid off Mama Sola like rain off stone. Adewale spoke then. Not as a husband. Not as a son. As a man choosing where to stand. This ends today. Ifeoma laughed once, short and incredulous. She reminded him of contracts, of public image, of everything she had protected while he chased numbers. She leaned back, confident in the weight of shared history. Adewale forwarded the footage to his lawyer, then to a secure drive. Then, after a breath he didn't know he'd been holding, to a trusted community elder who had asked questions before and been ignored. The shift was immediate. Subtle. Real. Ifeoma saw it in his posture. The way he no longer explained himself. Power had moved, not loudly, but decisively. Threats followed quickly. Legal language dressed as concern. Warnings about embarrassment. About what people would say. Adewale listened. He did not bend. Mama Sola reached for his hand. Her grip was firmer than before. She was not asking to be saved. She was witnessing a choice. I will not live where I am hidden, she said. Ifeoma stood. The room no longer belonged to her the way it had. She gathered her things with controlled precision, eyes cold now, calculating loss. At the door, she turned back. You'll regret choosing sentiment over sense. Adewale met her gaze. I already regret not choosing sooner. She left without slamming the door. The house exhaled, unfamiliar with honesty. Adewale looked at his mother. The truth had surfaced. The choice had been made. What followed? Lawyers, whispers, consequences, waited just beyond the walls. And for the first time, the locked gate felt heavier than any chain he had ever broken. The consequences arrived quietly, then all at once. Within days, lawyers replaced pleasantries. Statements were drafted with careful language, stripped of emotion but heavy with implication. The footage did what shouting never could. Neighbors who had looked away began to speak, voices shaky at first, then steadier. Not because they were brave, but because someone with power had finally chosen to stand still. Ifeoma's world narrowed. Invitations paused. Partnerships delayed. Her name stopped moving easily through rooms. No scandal exploded. No public spectacle followed. Just distance. The most expensive consequence of all. Mama Sola left the estate without ceremony. Adewale moved her into a smaller home across town, sunlit and modest. where the windows stayed open and people greeted her by name. A caregiver laughed too loudly in the mornings. Children argued in the afternoons. Life returned in ordinary pieces. Adewale visited every day, not with announcements, not with apologies rehearsed for effect. He came with fruit, with news, with time. He listened. Sometimes they sat without speaking, the kind of silence that repairs instead of wounds. He paused. The room held. Peace answered. At night, alone, Adewale walked through the old house less often. When he did, it felt hollow. Wealth still filled the rooms, but warmth had moved elsewhere. He understood now that success had made him efficient, and efficiency had almost made him cruel. Victory had cost him a marriage. It had cost him comfort, reputation, and the illusion that neutrality was harmless. It had also given him something he had nearly lost, the chance to choose correctly while it still mattered. Months later, Mama Sola sat on the veranda of her new home, listening to the evening. Adewale stood beside her, no longer towering, just present. You built many things, she said. Now you are learning how to keep one. He nodded, humbled by the simplicity of it. This one stayed with me. If this story touched you, subscribe to Ebony Billionaire Tales, like, and share it with someone who believes success should never come at the cost of dignity. Drop a comment and tell me, where are you watching from? Stories grow stronger when we listen together. Adewale left as the sun settled. Behind him, laughter drifted into the street. Ahead of him, the city waited, unchanged, demanding, honest. For the first time, he knew exactly where home was.